It's no secret that many test takers find the writing section the most difficult, especially if they're aiming for a high score. I've met countless students who take the test over and over again to get the score they want. The main problem is that the vast range of resources can be overwhelming and often offer conflicting advice. Trying to incorporate every strategy and technique into your essays leads to anxiety and, unfortunately, often lowers your score on test day. So, how can you avoid this situation? Hello and welcome to this comprehensive guide on how to ace IELTS writing. Today we're going to discover what the writing section of the IELTS test looks like, what the typical mistakes are, and discuss 7 important things to keep in mind for success in this section. Without further ado, let's get started. Part 1. The structure. The IELTS writing section consists of 2 tasks, Task 1 and Task 2. On the IELTS Academic, Task 1 involves writing a report describing some kind of visual information, such as tables, pie charts, bar charts, line graphs, maps, diagrams, and so on. This task is designed to test your ability to present information clearly and accurately in writing. Task 1 for IELTS General Training is slightly different. You have to write a letter based on the prompt you're given. It could be a letter of complaint. For example, you didn't like the service or product you received. A letter of request, you want to make a reservation or ask for advice. A letter of recommendation, to recommend something. A letter of invitation, and so on. This task measures your ability to communicate about common practical situations. So, while the IELTS Academic tests your ability to analyze and summarize information effectively, the IELTS General Training focuses on how well you can communicate in writing in everyday situations. You have 20 minutes to complete Task 1 for both the IELTS Academic and IELTS General Training. You should write a minimum of 150 words. Task 2 is the same for both tests. You have to write an essay in which you answer a question or a statement. The only difference is that the questions for general training essays are usually easier to understand and cover common topics, while academic essays are more complex and cover a wider range of topics. However, the types of essays are exactly the same. There are several types of essays. An opinion essay. It will usually ask you to agree or disagree with the statement. A discussion essay that asks you to discuss both sides and give your opinion. A 2-part essay. This essay usually asks 2 questions about some topic. An advantages and disadvantages essay. This one has 2 versions that will require a different approach. A cause and solution essay, and so on. It's important to know how to organize your answer for each type of essay, because if you use the same approach for all of them, you'll never get a high score. We cover all of these essay types in our IELTS preparation course. So if your exam is approaching and you feel you need further guidance, feel free to join by clicking the link below. As a former IELTS test taker, I know how frustrated and disoriented you may feel right now because there is so much information out there and you don't know where to start. That is why we have organized all the information in the writing module in a clear and easy to understand way. We'll practice writing the ideal introduction, learn how to brainstorm effectively, find out how to approach each essay type, and what to do to get a high score on test day. We'll also provide you with templates that will make writing an essay much easier. If you already have experience with the writing section, choose the Pro package and get your speaking and writing assessed. Now, Task 2 is longer than Task 1 and requires you to write at least 250 words. You have 40 minutes to complete it. Let's move on to Step 2. The typical mistakes students make when preparing for the IELTS writing section. The first mistake is to write less than the task requires. If you write less than 150 words for writing Task 1 and less than 250 words for writing Task 2, you won't be able to develop your ideas well enough and will lose points. In fact, in the past, this would automatically give you a 5 for task achievement. But this rule is no longer applicable. However, to get a high score, I'd recommend writing about 175 to 185 words for writing Task 1 and 275 to 285 words for writing task 2. Another mistake is to write too much. Some students think that the more ideas they include in their essays, the higher their score will be. In fact, you won't get a high score just by writing a longer essay, although there is no upper limit on IELTS writing. What I often see is that exceeding the word limit of 300 words for writing task 2 and 200 words for writing task 1 often results in 1. Students making more mistakes because they can't proofread their essays carefully enough. 2. Adding too many relevant sentences that don't contribute to your essay. Remember that effective writing is all about getting your message across in a concise and clear way. So don't add too many sentences just to impress an examiner. Aim for 175 to 185 words for writing task 1 and 275 to 285 words for writing task 2. 3. Memorizing sample essays. You may not believe it, but there are many students who simply memorize model answers and use them on the day of the test. Well, this will most likely result in a low score. Examiners aren't stupid, no matter how many essays you memorize. If you use a memorized model answer on the day of the test, the examiner will see that it doesn't match the topic and will lower your score. Mistake number 4, not analyzing the question before you start writing. This applies to both task 1 and task 2. When you write them, make sure you spend at least 5 minutes analyzing the prompt and thinking about what to include in your answer. This will help you write faster later, address all the points in the prompt, and ensure that you don't go off topic. Mistake number 5, copying the text from the prompt. This is a very common mistake. Again, there is nothing wrong with copying a few words from the question in both tasks. In fact, I encourage my students to do this if they can't think of an appropriate synonym or paraphrase for a word, or if they can't rephrase the question so that it doesn't contain that word. Taking a few words from the question is better than paraphrasing incorrectly. However, if you copy the whole sentence or even part of the sentence without changing anything, you will lose points because the examiner won't count them in the word count. If you have trouble putting the same information in your own words, use these techniques when paraphrasing. 1. Change infinitives like to drive to gerunds, driving, or vice versa, if you can't think of an appropriate synonym. 2. Change part of speech, nouns to verbs or verbs to nouns. For example, to influence and influence, to have a negative effect, to adversely affect. This is a very helpful collocation for your writing, so feel free to write it down. You can always say that something adversely affects something else. 3. Change passive voice to active voice and active voice to passive voice. For example, some people believe, it's often believed that. There are other techniques you can use, but these are the 3 most common. Mistake number 6, making too many spelling mistakes. No matter how good your essay is, if it has too many spelling mistakes or typos, you won't score high. You can improve your spelling by reading more or practicing on the Fast Fingers website. I'll leave the link below. You can use American or British spelling during the test, but make sure you are consistent. Mistake number 7, writing sentences that are too long. Yes, we all know that in order to get a high score for grammatical range and accuracy, you should demonstrate a wide range of structures. This includes using complex, compound, and complex compound sentences. But what I often see is that many students make their sentences too long. This may be typical in their native language, but in English, writing extremely long sentences often leads to a loss of coherence and more grammatical mistakes. Of course, you should carefully review all 4 types of sentences and practice using them in your writing automatically with full flexibility and control. But on the day of the test, focus on organizing your ideas in a clear and effective way, rather than worrying about whether or not your sentences are long enough. Finally, Mistake number 8 is not giving yourself enough time to proofread your answer. One of the primary goals of writing a successful essay for both Task 1 and Task 2 is to produce a lot of error-free sentences. In fact, the fewer mistakes you have in your essay, the better. Unlike the TOEFL test, IELTS examiners are very strict about all kinds of mistakes, including grammar, vocabulary, and spelling. So take at least 5 minutes at the end of your essay to carefully review what you've written. Read your essay 3 times. For content, make sure you've covered all the points and that your essay is logical and easy to follow. For grammar, looking for errors in grammar and punctuation. And for vocabulary, making sure that the vocabulary you use is appropriate and effectively conveys your message. Now that we've discussed the most common mistakes students make in IELTS writing, it's time to move on to the most important part of our lesson. 7 things to keep in mind to succeed in this section. Actually, we already covered many important tips when we went through the mistakes, but let's look at a few more things to keep in mind. 1. Make sure your writing skills are up to par. It goes without saying that no matter how many tips and tricks you study, if your writing skills are poor, you won't be able to ace the IELTS writing. We have a few lectures at the beginning of our course where I explain how to effectively improve your English, including your writing skills. But the main advice is to read a lot. In fact, the more you expose yourself to quality English, the better your level becomes. Brush up on your grammar, expand your advanced and academic vocabulary, study synonyms, and practice, practice, practice. I can't tell you how important daily writing is. If you only study grammar or vocabulary, but don't write, it will be a challenge to improve your writing skills. Set aside at least 10 to 15 minutes a day for writing. Tip number 2 flows from tip number 1. Study the most important grammar rules. I'd recommend starting with topics such as articles, tenses, punctuation, sentence types, plural and singular forms, conditionals, and prepositions. Believe me, as someone who proofreads and grades essays on a daily basis, I see that every single student makes mistakes on most of these topics. You can use the English Page website to revise many of them. I love this website because it offers effective exercises for advanced students to practice grammar rules. Tip number 3, study synonyms and paraphrasing. As we just discussed, you'll need to efficiently paraphrase the questions for Task 1 and Task 2. To do this, you need to be good at paraphrasing. To practice, simply take a paragraph from any article and try to rewrite it in your own words. You can also use the Excelsior Online Writing Lab for fun paraphrasing exercises. Here are some important paraphrasing techniques. Start the sentence at a different point than the original. Use synonyms. Change the sentence structure. Try switching from the active voice to the passive voice and vice versa. Break up longer sentences or combine shorter ones. Speaking of synonyms, when writing an essay, you should not only know synonyms for the word you want to change, but also be able to use them well. For example, some synonyms are very important are crucial, essential, pivotal, vital, key, indispensable, integral, and so on. Does this mean that I can just use all of these words in the same context? Not really. The same goes for any new words you learn. You may know the word and its definition, but that doesn't mean you'll be able to use it successfully on test day. In fact, I often see students who misuse some new words they have learned. So tip number 4 is to learn chunks of language, not individual words. We often call these chunks collocations. A collocation is a word or phrase that is often used with another word or phrase in a way that sounds correct and natural. And you want your essays to be correct and natural. Some examples of collocations are adversely affect, tackle the issue of, dive into the topic of, and so on. To make sure you really know how to use a new word, create what I call a collocation flower. This is where you put the word in question in the center of the flower and think about what other words it collocates with. For example, let's say my new word is foster. One of its meanings is to encourage the development or growth of something. Now, what can I foster? You can foster innovation, creativity, cooperation between countries, unity, and so on. To find such collocations, use vocabulary.com or the Scale website. Tip number 5, don't overcomplicate your essays unless you're 100% sure of the vocabulary you use. I'm not saying you shouldn't use complex words and/or phrases. In fact, you're highly encouraged to do so to get a high score on the lexical resource. You should be able to demonstrate a wide range of vocabulary, but you should use it accurately and appropriately, with very natural and sophisticated control of lexical features. What I see many students do is try to stuff their answers with as many fancy and challenging words as they know. They usually think that the harder their essays are to understand, the better. In fact, using sophisticated vocabulary incorrectly will only cost you points. So make sure you only use the words you're 100% sure of and focus more on the content than the vocabulary. Tip number 6, in writing task 2, make your position as clear as possible. For example, if the question asks you to agree or disagree with the statement, either agree or disagree, and don't choose partial agreement. This will help you meet the requirements of the assignment. Tip number 7, always include an opening statement and a sign-off in your letters for task 1 of the IELTS General Training. An opening statement usually explains the reason why you're writing this letter. For example, I'm writing with regards to. I'm writing to thank you for the wonderful party you organized for Mark's birthday. Make sure your opening statement matches the type of letter, if it's formal or informal, and matches its purpose. If it's a complaint letter, an apology letter, a request letter, and so on. Your sign-off should also be adapted. If you're writing to your friend, you're not going to end with yours sincerely. You need something less formal, like best wishes. Well, that's the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, or share this video with your IELTS study buddies. Don't forget to comment below about your struggles with IELTS writing. Practice hard and approach the test with a calm and focused mindset. Remember, getting a high score on the IELTS is not an impossible feat. You can do it. If you need more help with your writing or would like to have your essays evaluated, choose the Pro package in our IELTS preparation course and prepare 2 essays for our consultation. Until next time, happy studying, and I'll see you all very soon in the next video. Good luck!